We see a mayor that has failed us. He tells us he's going to solve the problem. He tells us no more are our children going to die on the streets from knife crime.
On Thursday, a 15-year-old boy was stabbed. Honestly, I can't talk about it. I can't talk about it without getting upset. Got children the same age, in the same part of London. 15-year-old boy was stabbed to death.
I kept doing my research, and it's not just this year that your current mayor of London has been crippling the police force. And the more I go into these numbers, the more it sickens me. London now has the lowest number of police officers per capita than any city in the UK. No wonder violent crime is going up. No wonder knife crime is going up. One of my key policies as your next mayor is to make London safe again. I want to support the Metropolitan Police with more situation-based training protocols. Zero tolerance for knife crime and possession. Everyone needs to know it's no longer acceptable to do that. I want to address the cause of crime. That's the problem that no one's talking about here. We have to start at the root of this problem. The knife crime is the end result of a lack of leadership in the community. We've got to promote positive pathways for our youth. We are going to solve these problems together. We're going to support our police, and we're going to lead this city in a new direction. And our teenagers, our children, and our citizens can walk the streets in safety. I promise you that.
One, two, three. Listen.
Welcome to Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal. Joining me today are the happy pair. Welcome to Real Deal. Welcome to Real Deal. I am Brian Rose, and we are live here at London Real Studios to talk about knife crime and to talk about the 100th teenager that's been murdered on our streets under the term of the current mayor. This is a very serious topic, and I'm going to be looking for your input today and your thoughts via all the live comments, and I want to talk you through what I've discovered and what I now think about the current situation of knife crime in this city, also our rising crime rate overall, and now the fact that our current mayor is defunding the police, which means this problem is going to get worse unless we find a solution and find new leadership. This is a very sensitive topic, and to be honest with you, the more and more I've done research on this, the more it's been hard to learn the facts and to see these images and to know how much we have been failed as a population in this city of London. Knife crime is currently at nightmare proportions. It's at an all-time high, and it's all because of the inaction of our current mayor, and it's teenagers killing each other in the streets. And if this doesn't say something about our leadership or who we are as a population, then I don't know what does. And so I want to talk seriously today about problems. I also want to give you numbers and statistics, and I want to give you solutions, because that's what I plan to do as your next mayor of London. And I plan and I will reduce knife crime in this city. So today, I want to talk about three major topics. First of all, I want to go into detail about what is exactly happening on the streets with knife crime and teenage knife crime. The statistics are very sobering and shocking, but I want to share them with you so you can know where we're at today. Secondly, I want to show you how violent crime overall in London is also skyrocketing and what the ramifications are of that. And finally, I want to show you how our mayor is trying to defund the police currently, right now, with the latest budget. And I want to show you how that's going to impact all of us, and of course, knife and violent crime as well. And finally, I want to introduce my policy to make London safe again, to reduce knife crime, to reduce overall crime, to support the Met Police, to support community-led strategies to prevent these crimes in the first place, to really think about how these even start to happen. And I want to share with you some of my ideas on that. Before we get started, I just want to say that today marks the 20th anniversary of the murder of the 10-year-old boy, Damilola Taylor. And he was walking home from school in London 20 years ago today, and he was knifed to death by a group of teenagers. And this was a seminal moment here in the United Kingdom because it showed the entire country how serious this issue was. It woke everyone up, and it's shocking to me, and it's repugnant to me that 20 years later, we are now in a worse situation because of your current mayor of London and the leadership. So I want to send out support to his family. There's been some incredible work done around him and the foundation, and we need to continue pushing this message because knife crime, it's a tragedy and it reflects poorly upon all of us, all the 9 million citizens of London. The fact that we tolerate and allow this to happen in our very own streets to our very own children from the leaders that we elect, it's not acceptable. And that's one of the things I want to say today. And I want to make sure our current mayor gets this message along with our leaders in Parliament as well. This is a serious issue and it needs addressing right now. Before we get started, I want to get your thoughts because this is all of us. This is our city. These are our families. These are our children. And I want to hear from you. I want to get your perspectives on how we can solve this problem and what you're seeing in your streets when it comes to knife crime and violent crime and the lack of policing in London. So first, answer this question. Do you fear knife crime and why? I want to hear this from the teenagers all the way up to the adults, all the way up to the elderly. Do you think Londoners should have to live in fear of crime? That's my question for you. Do you think it's right that 100 of our own teenagers have been killed in the streets since our current mayor took office? Do you think the current mayor should take responsibility for the massive increase in crime on his watch? And then finally, I want you to tell me, do you think the mayor's defunding the police strategy is the solution for all of this? And if not, why? So please type those answers in. I'm getting all of the feeds here from Instagram to Facebook to Twitter to also YouTube. So please type your questions in. I'm going to be reading your answers back to you and giving you my thoughts on those. Before we get started, I want to say this. I don't believe in people bringing problems to the table. I believe that people should bring solutions. And so when learning all of the problems that our city faces right now, it's very easy to criticize. There's a critic on every corner. Everyone will tell you what's wrong with this city, but very few will step up and give solutions and step up and say, I am willing to execute on these solutions. And so many months ago, after seeing everything that was going wrong in the city of London, a city I love, a city I've lived in for 20 years, I thought, you know what? I'm going to stop criticizing and I'm going to start offering solutions. And I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. And I'm going to stand up and say, guess what? I'm willing to put my life on hold, my business on hold, everything on hold, and become your next mayor of London. And I realize there's nothing easy about this job. And I realize there's criticism and it's not an easy job. But I know that the way it's currently being executed is a disservice to all of us. And that's why I plan to be your next mayor of London. And so on May 7th, I promise I will move into City Hall and I will start making some of these critical changes when it comes to knife crime, crime in general, and supporting our Metropolitan Police. And so that's why I've decided to run and I will stand as your next mayor of London. And on May 7th, we will start solving these problems. You mark my word on that. So let's begin. First of all, knife crime is at nightmare proportions. And you can see this recent article from The Telegraph that says exactly that. It said that our current mayor, Sadiq Khan, is criticized for tackling knife crime as the 100th teenager killed during his time as mayor. And here's another headline from the Mail Online, and I'm going to read this one out. And this says, quote, blood was pouring out of him. He was screaming, why has this happened to me? Plumber, who was the first on scene of London's stabbing, reveals agony of one of 4 random victims of a 14-hour knife rampage. This is the thing that happens in our capital city every day. And when I go into the article from The Telegraph, it talks about some of the things that have been happening. And it said 3 weeks ago, another teenager was fatally stabbed during a fight in Maida Vale in West London. Of the teenagers who have been killed in Khan's time in office, 2 were only 14 years old, while 9 of them were 15 and 16-year-olds. And one of our politicians, Ian Duncan Smith, said, Sadiq Khan is, quote, a man whose irrelevance is only matched by his incompetence when he is called on to make decisions like this. He went on to say that, quote, he said he would reduce crime only for London to witness an epidemic in gang violence, resulting in the senseless deaths of young people and the growth of a culture of criminality. Another politician chimed in and said, quote, 100 teenagers have died since Sadiq Khan became mayor. That's 100 mums who can no longer hug their children or see them grow up. And went on to say, quote, this is a shocking trend. Knife crime rose by 38% in the year prior to lockdown. Homicides are at an 11-year high, And Sadiq Khan's response is to defund the police by 110 million pounds. And I'll get into that shortly. And he went on to say, quote, "It's a terrible indictment of Sadiq Khan. Londoners deserve a safer, fair, and more affordable city. If Sadiq Khan won't deliver, then he should step aside for someone who can." Let's look into the numbers because they say everything. And again, I am a big fan of the numbers and the statistics and the science. If you can prove it by the numbers, then it's true. Everything else is opinion and conjecture. And let's look at these numbers. And you can see from this graph on screen, the number of knife crimes recorded in London from 2010 to 2020. And if you look at this bar chart, you can see as we go from 2011 to 12 to 13 to 14 to 15, knife crime is going down. From 14,000 cases to 11,000 cases, down to 10,000 cases, down to less than 10,000 cases. And right around when our current mayor is elected, you see them jump to 12,000 cases, 14,000 cases, and this year now topping over 15,000 knife crime cases in this city. There it is. In black and white, the numbers don't lie. And this report goes on to say, quote, "It is undeniable that the cuts in both police funding and officer numbers are important factors." But the problem with this is that it's not just numbers. These are real human beings. They're actually teenagers that are dying in our streets every single week. And I want to show some of their names. So this is an article that was published in The Sun this year, and it goes on to say, "Lawless London, London stabbings, the latest news on knife crime, attacks, and statistics." And I want to talk to you about some of the victims because these are real people. These are children that belong to families. They have mothers, they have fathers. On January 27th this year, Lewis Johnson, who was 16 years old, was stabbed in front of shocked commuters during evening rush hour at East Croydon Station in southeast London. Less than 2 weeks later, on February 5th, a 19-year-old boy was stabbed in a knife fight on Kingsley Road in Hounslow in West London. Met Police confirmed a man in his early 20s and a 15-year-old boy were arrested on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm with intent. Teenage on teenage violence. It's unacceptable. On the same day, February 5th, a horrified dock walker discovered 15-year-old Babakar Diagni stabbed to death on grassland in Coventry. And on February 5th, the 16-year-old victim was rushed to hospital after being stabbed in broad daylight in upmarket Highgates. Those are 3 teenage stabbing deaths in the same day on February 5th of this year. And the article goes on to say this, quote, "London's knife crime explosion has fueled the capital's highest murder rate in more than a decade." It goes on to say, quote, 10 people on average are caught with blades every day in the streets of London. Every day, 10 people are caught with blades. How many more are carrying them? And politician Rakia Ismail, who was formerly of the Labour Party, the same party of the current mayor of London, accused our current mayor of, quote, failing to take action against knife crime, which she said has risen to, quote, by, quote, 34% since he took office in 2016. Our current mayor's own members of his party are calling him up on his poor performance on knife crime. This is a real topic, and these are real teenagers dying in the streets. And you can't point the finger when teenagers are killing teenagers. You have to look at what the society is doing. How are we failing these young kids when they are killing each other with knives right in front of us on the streets of our city that we love? It's unacceptable. And we have to think about what our leaders are doing, what our police officers are doing, what are our policies, and what are our priorities. And that's why, as your next mayor of London, this is going to be very high on my list as one of the first things I do on May 7th. And so, look, I want to hear from you. I want to get your thoughts on all of this. Do you fear knife crime and why? Please tell me in the comments. Should Londoners have to live in fear of crime? Answer that question for me. Tell me, do you think it's right that 100 of our teenagers have been murdered on our streets in the capital city? Do you think our current mayor should take responsibility for the massive increase in knife crime and overall violent crime? And do you think the mayor's strategy of defunding the police is the solution? And if not, why? And as you're answering those questions, I want to play for you a piece of video that was on television, and it's Piers Morgan, one of the hosts of one of the morning shows here.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.